going to have to put this on mute for sure. Happens to me every time. If you have the YouTube open on any other devices, make sure you do the same. Go to mute. Okay. Now we're streaming. I hear somebody has the video on. Turn down the volume.
I don't have the video on. Jacqui, you have the video on?
Not guilty.
Okay. Guilty here. Okay, so let's get the party started. As I say, sorry everybody for the delay. As I put in the comments, it's typical, as we know, when you go to the doctor's office, sometimes you have to wait. So, but here we are, and so let's get going. Hello, planet Earth, as I always say, and welcome to Lilia's Weekly Wednesdays, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lilia. I work for Facialteam as a community manager. My pronouns are she and hers. As the creator of Facialteam's 3,000 plus private Facebook peer group, which I founded 8 years ago, I've been an ally to the trans community since 2008. And I've always felt like a patient advocate, and I'm keenly aware that researching gender identity services is often overwhelming, which is why we have created this venue of communication with you, our followers. So today I am very honored, let's see here, to introduce and welcome two guests, as always, from two different continents. Jacqui Gavin, a longtime civil servant and trans activist from the UK, and Dr. Daniel Simon, originally from Brazil, but now in Spain. Welcome to both of you.
Hello, Lilia.
Yeah, hello.
Hello, Jacqui.
Hello, how are you?
Very good. Nice to see you here.
Likewise.
So today we're going to be speaking specifically about transition in the UK, because Jacqui has a lot to say about this, and also we have Dr. Simon here to give a more medical perspective on some of the key topics we're going to bring up. So Jacqui, you have expansive experience at the heart of the British government. Can you tell us, Jacqui, a little bit about your background? We're busy, sorry. Call later.
So where do I start? I mean, yes, as you say, Lilia, I mean, for me, it's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me. I suppose to cover off the point that you talked about, I mean, before I even became a part of the Central Civil Service in the UK, I was, as you rightly said, an activist, where I really had a long focus on trans issues for a number of years, more years than I care to remember. Let's call it close to 40 years in that kind of space. But from about 2008-9, I then moved into a role in the Central Civil Service, where first of all, I worked for the Department for Work and Pensions, where I led the change on transgender issues as the representative chairing the transgender support group within that government department, which is obviously the government department that's responsible for anything to do with benefits in the United Kingdom. Before I then transferred to a more central civil service role, where I was a part of the Central Civil Service Network, a gender which at that time was very much a transsexual network that was based on male to female transitioners or female to male transitioners, and how we better understand that process. Since then, being a part of that organization, we took that organization moving into more understanding what the gender non-binary, gender fluid, etc., in that kind of space, and really having those conversations at the table that needed to be had with the more senior aspects of the civil service, right up to ministerial level sometimes, to really get an understanding about what it is to be transgender and much more beside. So that's a little bit of an understanding from me. I'm more than happy to go obviously into more details later on, but.
That was very comprehensive, Jacqui. And did you mention that you were listed on the Pride Power list in 2015 and 2016, the Rainbow list in 2015, as one of the most influential people in the UK, LGBTQI and people in the UK. So I commend you for all your work that you're doing within the government and beyond.
Thank you.
So thanks again. It's an honor to have you here and
Great to be here.
sharing some information with our followers. So, Dr. Simon,
Yes,
shall
I'm
I
here.
introduce you, or can you tell us a little bit about yourself, besides the fact that you are CEO and co-founder of Facialteam?
Yes, well, I have been in most of our lives here. I work here as interview together with Lilia. Here, Lilia is my boss. She's becoming the new David Letterman of live live feeds. It's very nice.
I prefer Oprah Winfrey, please.
Okay. So she's the new Oprah. I love it. And and yeah, I'm here working at Facialteam as since 2009 approximately. So we are now over 11 years, and we together with Capitan, we have been dedicating ourselves exclusively to facial feminization surgery during the last decade. This has been extremely important because when you dedicate yourself to one specific specialty in surgery, it helps a lot on the development of that area for the surgeon, because you focus a lot on the techniques, so you start to notice where you can improve. And the way we work nowadays is, of course, much different than we worked 10 years ago. And the team that we are is much different than we were 10 years ago. So we were around 4 or 5 people. Now we are over 60 or 70 collaborators in total working every day at Facialteam. And we are very proud surgeons of more than, well, almost around over 2,000 trans women that underwent their facial feminization with us. And yeah, I'm happy to share my point of view on some of these issues, but I'm sure, of course, Jacqui is the one today that is the star in the interview, and if I can collaborate, I will be very happy with it too.
Thank you. I'm sure that you will have definitely some very interesting viewpoints at certain points in our conversation today. So the topics that we marked to talk about today are the choices and options in a gender transition. So what's involved in the transition, and that's why we have 2 expert viewpoints: Jacqui, who is herself has firsthand experience, and also from her work in the community, and Dr. Simon as an expert in facial gender affirming surgery. So, and Jacqui, in your own words, you said, let's have the honest conversation. So that's what we're trying to do today. So let's dive straight into it and see exactly what is involved in deciding to transition. But first, Jacqui, you had your own journey, let's say,
Yep.
quite a few years ago, but you were here recently. Can you tell us a little bit about your time in Marbella this summer?
So
Despite
yes,
COVID.
yes, despite COVID, it was great to be back down in Spain and back down in the very, very genuine and warm care of Facialteam, because I came down to Marbella just a few weeks ago to support my own partner, Isabel, who had her own facial feminization surgery with the lovely Mr. Simon, Dr. Simon, and going through that process itself. So to me, it was a real important thing to be there with Isabel, to be able to provide her with that support, because we know that with facial feminization, it's a deeply personal thing, and it's a deeply individual thing. And sometimes you just need that little bit of reassurance, and that was great to be able to do that. Did I need to be there? No, I didn't need to be there. It was lovely to be able to be there in the sunshine of Spain, of which we've got sunshine here in the UK today. But it was great to be there. And again, as I say, I cannot mention enough the real warmth that we get from everybody at Facialteam every time we go down there and spend time there.
Aw, thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
So, Dr. Simon, and being on the other side of the picture now, having started to operate again since June, right? What's it like for you from your viewpoint now working in times of COVID?
Yeah, we have since March we have to stop 100% of our surgeries. We have been not operating until the mid-June, and we resume our activities with only the, let's say, the assurance that we will be doing this in an extremely safe way. We have been working since mid of June, and we have operated until now, end August, around 70 patients. We have a very strong protocol for COVID diagnostic. So all patients, they will be tested before and after, and we have had 0 COVID positives in our patients that came from all over Europe. And for now, we are extremely optimistic with the months that will come. Of course, it's difficult. Every country now is going through their own problems, but we believe that there's going to be a very soon possibility of starting a vaccine. People are also being more conscious about the way to behave during this pandemic to be more safe. And medically, we are doing everything we can to provide a very safe experience. Jacqui knows that she has been with us, and she knows that we are extremely, let's say, relaxed people. We live a very let's say calm surgical life here. We are not here for stress, and that we want to provide patients with a lot of relaxed experience as well. So we would not be working if we believe there are risks or if the activity is not safe. So yeah, we are working good, and of course hoping that patients can come more and more in the next months.
Thank you, Dr. Simon. I'm sure that's really reassuring for the people who are watching this video now and who will be listening to this information later in the replay version. And I'm sure, Jacqui, people ask you too, they're concerned about travel now overseas, and we've received a lot of patients from many different countries in Europe in these recent months, and it's been successful. All the protocols are in place, so it's going well. And so I'm glad that we've addressed this issue, because I get asked a lot in the patient group, how safe it is. Are the hotels, are the restaurants open? Can you go for a walk outside, kind of thing, and putting in the right kind of precautions, as everybody knows, with the mask, etc., hand washing and stuff. Then it can be quite a safe experience. So,
Absolutely.
Jacqui, can you tell us a little bit about how you personally decided to transition?
I mean, I've been thinking about this question, Lilia. I mean, and does one really, really choose to transition? It's one of those things that we all come to a point in our lives whenever we realize there's something different about us and how we get into that kind of space. And for me, as I say, you're testing my memory, because first of all, it was nearly 35 years ago. In fact, it was over 35 years ago. But it's also that kind of aspect about coming to the realization that you have to be true to yourself emotionally, physically, and so much more. And that for me was that point where I knew I didn't fit the person that I was presenting to the world in that kind of aspect. And I got to that point at a very early stage. I think all trans people can say that in some way, shape, or form. But for me, I was able to go through the whole transition process at a relatively young age, and be able to be true to myself. But I suppose it's always a learning process. I had my own facial surgery with Facialteam 6 years ago now, coming up to 6 years ago now. And again, it's constantly finding that comfort with yourself and acknowledging yourselves. I know, for example, with the facial surgery, it was very much a case of I would walk past a window and I would still see the old him looking back at me, no matter what I actually looked like when I was in my way of I was dressed, etc. It was just I felt I needed to do something to allow me to become the real me more. So on that side itself, and the same with the wider aspect of the gender reassignment surgery, it was coming comfortable with my body, being in comfort with the way the clothes I wore, etc., etc. It's everything that it takes to come to yourself, if that makes sense.
It makes absolute sense. And I'll tell you why. I was speaking with Juno Rocher, the author,
Yes.
yesterday, and she talks about this a lot, in that actually we all are uncomfortable in our bodies.
Absolutely.
Everybody is doing things to try to make themselves look like the other person, look like that supermodel, to look what they think is going to be better. So there's a parallel there. It's not just trans people now who are uncomfortable in their bodies, but it's
Exactly.
different. It's different. So yes, it makes perfect sense, Jacqui. Thank you for that explanation. And Dr. Simon, um, on your side of this topic, what is your role in helping the patient in their decision making process to have surgery or not? And sometimes that may even mean they decide not to transition, or not to medically transition. And what do you think is important for professionals that may be listening to this video at some point to keep in mind, and the importance of being objective when you are providing guidance to patients at a very early stage? You have to turn on your mic. Your mic's off.
Sorry.
There
Of
you go.
course, it matters a lot, the role that you play in the, let's say, in the medical team that is treating a patient. And of course, we are more focused on the face. But my advice, of course, in general, for doctors that are starting to work with trans women undergoing transition, is of course to be extremely supportive. This is very important because it's not our decision. My role in general, I could, let's say, associate this question a lot with patients that come to us in the very early stage of transition. Patients that will come to us to consultations completely dressed as masculine, still with no hormone treatment, and there I see a lot of importance in the role of a surgeon, or of a psychologist, or a psychiatrist, or a gender surgeon, to help those patients to how we normally say, to put the sand down, so to organize things on their mind, to create a guide map on their minds, so they understand what are the alternatives in our field. In the face, I always explain the patient what is the patient going to be able to benefit in the future after hormone treatment works. So I think that we, as surgeons or doctors, we need to be able to explain to the patients what is the guide map, what are the possibilities, what they should not do, and information that you give to them is just going to help them more in the transition process. It's not our role to decide, or to help them decide if they transition or not, just to give them the tools so that the transition becomes more clear. The worst thing, I believe, is the lack of information, because we as human beings, when we don't know what is in front of us, we make a movie on our heads, and we can have ideas that are completely exaggerated or underestimated of things that we need. If you get real information, you relax and things become much more clear. So this, I think, is the role of that we have.
Thank you, Dr. Simon. Do you have any further comments, Jacqui, on the topic of transitioning, maybe specifically from the perspective of the UK? Would you make any recommendations to professionals or the systems in the UK that are available currently that might make it?
I think the UK, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Lilia, and I think the UK it's going through a challenging time at this time. There's no denying that. The gender services that we actually have, gender identity clinics, are so overwhelmed with the number of patients that are coming through the process at the moment, and it really, really needs looking at and supporting as much as possible to understand what it is that's going on and what's causing this issue, and how can we support people as much as possible, even if it's a case of having that conversation. As Dr. Simon says, it's about being able to have that conversation and go through the kind of things that are available to be able to provide them with that support. So I think it's important that people realize that it is so difficult and so challenging at this time, but it's about working in partnership, collaboration with the medical professionals, but it's also knowing yourself. Yes, there are other ways you can do it. You can go privately if you choose to go privately rather than using on the health service themselves, but everybody will find themselves. Exactly, yeah.
Jacqui, let me ask you a question. one of the questions we have for many patients is that if they should come alone for surgery, right? And you just mentioned like let's say medically speaking, you didn't need to come to support, but of course there's a strong impact on this, on the fact that someone comes for surgery. But I'm not talking only about surgery, I'm talking about the transition itself. We are having more and more patients in the last years that are younger and coming with their families, okay? So it's a big change. We're having patients coming with their mother, father, even brothers and sisters to the consultation, and this is becoming more and more common. So I would like to know, from your point of view in the UK, is this something that it's growing more and more? Are we supposed to expect this growth in this new behavior, that we are having more patients with family support during their transition?
I think so, yes. I mean, again, you're asking me to test my memory, but again, 35 years ago, I mean, it was very much a lonely journey is the best way I can describe it. The individual would go through the process on an individual basis, i.e. we know the average age as well of people going through transition was a lot older back then. So these days, we realize it's not just about the individual going through this process, it's the family, it's the friends, it's the colleagues, it's so much more. And to me, that's why, again, being with Isabel was so important for me, because it's that whole experience. It's not just about the individual going through this process and them celebrating at the end of it, because it's a huge weight lifting off their shoulder when they go through that experience. And it's particularly with the role that Facialteam plays, it's that taking away those markers, as I talked about, that really, really gets that kind of aspect. And when you've got somebody that's with you that can reassure you to say, hey, it's all right. You may look the way you do at the moment, but when I looked at Isabel, it was like, where's the bruises? I can't see any bruises. But you just need that kind of aspect. So I think, to answer your question, Dr. Simon, yes, you probably will see more and more people, because it's a collection of experiences rather than just the one experience.
I love this point of view. You said that the experience itself of undergoing surgery or treatment or the whole transition, if family or husband or wife, if they get a side, so you get a part of the process, they lose a lot, because it's like the process is also on them. It's something that is going to affect them, and they can learn so much and improve so much personally as well, if they can follow this process together with their loved ones, right? And yeah, I'm happy to know that you also believe it's going to grow a lot.
Yes, indeed.
It's a collective experience in my mind, and in the 10 years that I have working, with the community, what I found is that there are some people who come alone and they're okay. Like you said, she would have been okay. The facial team takes very good care of the patients, and extra special when they come by themselves. But when you have somebody there, somebody who's understanding and who knows, who's been informed, who's really, proactive, then that's helpful. Sometimes our psychologists comment, sometimes they need to provide more attention to the companion who hasn't had the opportunity to advance their journey alongside their daughter or their partner or their other family member in the same way. So they need more discussion with Marina than the actual patient.
Yeah,
it's true. It's true.
So that's a very good point. Very good point. So I think, yeah, we've kind of painted a reasonable picture, given a framework about what goes into transition. It's not easy. It's not like this. It doesn't happen. It's not a whim, like some people online seem to think nowadays. That it's some kind of fad. It's just not. So I'd like to move on to a little bit of opinion, if you don't mind. I don't want, I was talking with, as I said, I was talking with Juna Roche yesterday, and because I'll be doing a live with her next week, and she said something that is so true, and I just don't want to give them more space. And so there are people out there saying things that are trans exclusionary. And Jacqui, you have something to say about this now, so I'm going to let you go off with that.
I mean, for me, I mean, yes, we have got the TERF, the exclusionary, call it what you will. And to me, being the typical civil servant, as if I can, I mean, to me, we need to be able to really, really listen to all sides of the debate, whether it be the individual that wants to be exclusionary, the individual that wants to understand what it is, people like ourselves. We need to be able to, as I see it, really, really get to the point where we can really, really break down some of those barriers, break down that fear factor, break down the messages that are actually happening out there at the moment, because the sheer amount of hate that is out there is probably worse now than it's ever been. And I really want to encourage an opportunity for us all to be able to really understand what is the difference and what is it that makes people in this place. You said it yourself, Lilia, too many people seem to think this is a whim. It's not just a whim. It's not even a lifestyle choice. It's about being true to yourself and authentic with yourself and authentic with, as we say, your friends, your family, your colleagues, so much so more. When people are able to be themselves, they're able to give so much more. I work in the field of diversity and inclusion, and to me, it's about breaking down those barriers. But I can't just break down the barriers from the people from the trans perspective. It's got to be broken down on all sides. We've got to really get in that space together as one, and that's the only way we can really, really begin to move forward. I could really get on my soapbox. I could really get quite political, but those people that know me, I'm not that kind of a person. I'm more about, as I say, hearing that person's viewpoint, that person's viewpoint, that person over there's viewpoint. In fact, give me 360 people around about me, or give me 2.1 trillion people, or however many people are on this planet. Let's hear every single person's viewpoint and really move forward together.
Absolutely, I agree. And I'd like to bring in a little bit of Dr. Simon's opinion on this topic as well, because I think that it might help, if more professionals, people like surgeons come out, they're educated, well-rounded, and knowledgeable people, experts in their field, and also have a lot of experience with the community. Dr. Simon, make sure you turn on your microphone. What what would you say right now? Because tomorrow is Suicide Prevention Day, International Suicide Awareness Day, and this month of September is Suicide Prevention Month. So we have the people that Jacqui mentioned, that are outpouring hate on all kinds of channels. The pandemic, which has put the community in a more vulnerable situation than ever, and the problems that they already have to handle every day. And what message of support and encouragement would you share, and would like to say for example, to your peers who don't understand the transgender, non-binary, gender non-conforming community that you work with exclusively? Microphone.
First, of course, I mean, my support to Jacqui is 100%, of course, and we live in a difficult world, and for some specific reasons, political reasons, it's more difficult in the last years. I am from a country that in Brazil, we have also right now a right-wing government that is also very complex with very obscurantist ideas, and it's sad to see this type of way of seeing the world, of seeing life. But as Jacqui said, we have to hear all the opinions and hope that that people are going to be reasonable enough to understand what is right, what is wrong, and that we should. I mean, it's so clear, right? I mean, we should understand that everyone is individual. We have the same problem, me and Luis, when we started working with FFS inside our own group of colleagues. So there was even a discrimination towards us as surgeons because we were working with transgender patients. If I would mention the things we have heard, you could not believe, really. It's completely crazy. let's say that medically, the way we had to react to this was by transforming what we did in science. And we have published in the last 10 years many scientific articles showing exactly what we do, that feminization is done on patients that are not needing any kind of aesthetic improvement, that they need the surgery because it's part of their transition, it's part of this journey they are going. And I try to believe that this is a way that we can help, that we can collaborate, because when we take this part of the process and transform this into real science, and you show the world that not only it's science, it's showing that we are talking about a necessity, we are talking about a reality. This is not no one here is crazy. This is a reality, and this is a surgery that is here to help those patients. I try to believe this is something that is helpful. For example, now we are working with the WPATH in the new standards of care, which is a very important document for health providers around the world. And we are again together with the WPATH talking about the face and putting effort on showing that the face is not something aesthetic. The face is something important in the transition, and the WPATH is putting all the treatments that are necessary into a transition. And so the medical field is trying to put their grain of sand into help. But yeah, I unfortunately, I have never been in the situation of our patients, and I live together with the patients every day. I know a lot about their history, but I am not the one that can really or had suffer what our patients suffer on their day by day. So the only thing I can do is support and try to help by using our science.
And that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. It's not just the only thing, it's a big thing. So thank you for that, Dr. Simon. For, you could just be devoted to the clinic and not care about anything else, but are interested in moving forward the technical aspects, the assessment methods, and the basis, the philosophical and conceptual basis for the surgery, which I believe will also have an impact in general on maxillofacial surgery as a whole, not just in surgery for the trans community.
For sure. Yeah, we hope it has. And Jacqui, I mean, you are so calm, and I mean, these questions, they I mean, this is what I was telling, that I am not at your place, and if I was, I mean, I know it's completely different, okay? But I mean, I'm Jewish, and when you think about this, in history when Jewish were attacked, and it's so sad. And when I think about when we ask you, how do you feel about what's going on right now against transgender? This must be very, very, very painful for you. But you are still political, and I think you were right. If we just shout and we go out, I don't know if it's going to help, right?
Absolutely. I mean, thank you for your acknowledgement there. I mean, to me, there's no point in getting angry. I mean, when you get angry, you lose it. I can't remember exactly what the quote is about that, but to me, it's about working this whole thing together is the best way. I mean, the only way we can get through to, I mean, one of my biggest heroes was Nelson Mandela. And when I think what Nelson Mandela did in South Africa in the post-apartheid area, where he had the peace and reconciliation conversations, yes, there was anger there. Yes, there was emotion there. And yes, I feel it when I see people saying things on social media, in papers, you name it, even on the daily news or whatever it may be. It is hurtful, it's spiteful, but reducing yourself down to that level, there's no point in getting into that level way of thinking. It's about, let's talk about it. Come and have a cup of tea with me and we'll chat about it, because that's the only way we're going to get to be able to understand it. It goes back to what I was just saying about family coming along to be a part of the surgery. Come along and understand what it is. Really get to know what it is when somebody goes through this process, because this process is deeply personal. And do you think you would put yourself through that? I don't think anybody would, but it's about doing it because it's the right thing for the person. And you and the facial team really get in that space with the patient, and that's why it works so well.
Thank you so much for your answer.
Yes, thank you, Jacqui, for that. And we try, it's the classic making space for everybody, respecting every person, for giving them, allowing them to express themselves as their true selves.
Absolutely.
And as a Facialteam employee, longtime Facialteam employee, I can vouch for that, internally and externally. So, changing topics now, Jacqui. This one's on you too. The Gender Recognition Act. What is it? This is a UK thing, and there's a lot of talk about it right now. So if we could start off with a simple definition for those of us who are listening and don't understand it.
So the Gender Recognition Act of 2004 is a piece of legislation that came into place following lots of court hearings that went all the way to the European Court of Human Rights, and following the, I suppose, the Labour Party came into power, and they really wanted to be able to be the party for equality, and they brought in the legislation for the Gender Recognition Act, which basically at its inception allowed the individual who was going from male to female or female to male to be legally recognized in that of their newly affirmed gender. That's it in its basic form. We know there is a lot more detail on that side itself, but it is very, very binary. And when I say binary, I'm obviously meaning male to female or female to male. Still is very binary. There has been updates to it over the years, but does it still do what it needs to do? Let's have an open conversation about that.
There's still work to be done, in other words.
There is a lot of work to be done because we know there are more and more people now identifying within the non-binary space, and certainly there was a consultation process that happened a couple of years ago now to be able to hear from the voice of the wider trans community. And of course, as I say, there are now more and more people that may not necessarily see the surgical intervention as the complete answer. And when I say the surgical intervention, I'm talking about mainly gender reassignment surgery. But yes, there's a lot of work to be done within that space. It's an act that's now over 16 years old. The world has changed, the world has moved on, and we need to recognize that.
Absolutely, I agree. And I usually start out with in my opening spiel saying that I believe that gender is a spectrum.
Yeah.
So I'm not privy to the black or white. There's a lot of gray in between, and I think that we're just starting to discover those. And so now we have non-binary people who say gender non-conforming, gender queer. And Dr. Simon, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Does Facialteam treat people who do not identify as trans necessarily? Are there other kinds of other gender identities that come to have facial feminization surgery?
It's a very good question, because this is a big surprise for a lot of colleagues of ours that when they think they understood what we do, and then we explain how it goes on and what we see on our day by day, they are amazed, because yes, we see patients that are cisgender that have, for example, features that are strong, and they want to improve that for different reasons, cosmetic, psychological, they don't feel fine with those features. And we see a lot of patients that do not place themselves in an exact point inside the spectrum in gender. So we have patients that they are doing a transition from female to from male to female, but at the same time they still like to have a lot of masculine gender markers on their face. They still do not have let's say an identification of themselves like we would expect them or want them to have with our closed heads that I have from being from the 70s, But right now it's different. Right now, our patients, they can have a complete different position inside the spectrum. We have this more and more. I think I'm not talking about exception anymore. I think that more than maybe half or a little bit less than half of our patients are well located inside the spectrum as male, female. So this is the rule right now. Patients that are looking for a change that is not specific. It's not I'm going from male to female. It's very common.
Right, that's interesting to hear. So it's not just about transition; it's about people seeking their true selves, regardless of gender. And of course, this is called facial feminization for a reason. Usually, these people want to have a feminine aspect, but it's not always the.
But there are levels. Exactly. You can go, doctor, I would like to eliminate any trace of masculinity. And this is something we can identify. I always tell the patients that the surgery is not about any kind of artistry. We are not artists. When we see the 3D scans, we work with the patients. We always do 3D scans like this one, for example. And on the 3D scans, we are able to identify exactly where was the effect of puberty. So where the hormones have had their effects. So we are also able then to work on the areas that are affected by puberty in a level that is stronger or less stronger for patients that would like to keep some masculinity on their face. We have many patients, for example, with strong jaws that they don't want to touch their jaws because they like the aspect. So there's no rule, there's no formula for your FFS. This is something that doesn't exist. Should be an individual plan.
Thank you for that. So those are the main topics that we had marked for discussion today. And I think that we've been talking now for around 40 minutes. So I think we're going to round out now. And if either of you have a takeaway message that you would like to leave to the people who will be viewing this video and the people who are watching now, and particularly keeping in mind that it is Suicide Prevention Month, and which is a major issue within the trans community in particular, even the LGBT community in general, and especially the trans community. Trans people have the highest rate of suicide of any minority group out there. So it's really significant, and it's something that needs more visibility as well. So please let me know. Jacqui, would you like to go first with a little takeaway message?
I mean, just picking up on that point, what you said, Lily, I mean, being Suicide Prevention Month, our Awareness Month, I've seen all too many people take their lives in my period of time through my transition, and the role that this team, Facialteam, plays in the whole package about it aspect. I mean, people talk about coming alive, as I said, post gender reassignment surgery, but I know the real sort of way that an individual feels that they are impacted on most of all is with the role that you and the Facialteam all play, because this is the thing that people see more than everything. They don't see necessarily what's between your legs. It's about being that kind of aspect, and this whole thing about being able to have that passing privilege, having that opportunity to just, as I say, walk down the street, head up high, because I see again all too many times where particularly the girls have got their heads down, etc., etc. This is why this whole thing matters, and this is why, as I say, I love the whole aspect of Facialteam. If you get the opportunity to have a conversation, even if it's just a conversation, and have a chat over a coffee and talk about the kind of aspects, you guys get it. You guys get it 110%, massively so. And even to the point where we are in the pandemic, as I said, I was down there just a couple of weeks ago, and there was support that Dr. Simon talked about. Everything is done, and it's done in a way that means that everybody is protected. You feel secure the whole time, from the package at the hospital, the way the team treat you, even to the hotel itself that you were speaking to, the guy at Villa Malabrea where we stayed. The whole thing is just knockout. And for me personally, thank you for everything you're doing, and keep doing it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jacqui.
Anytime.
And I thank you so much for being today with us, and I give a message of support to you, because you are on the other side of the fight, and you are more political. And I strongly believe that, of course, we need people. People are angry, but being able to hear calmly, Mandela style, like you said, being able to go over the differences and discuss and talk about the problems is the only way that we are going to be able to solve them and go forward. And again, we are very happy when we hear messages. We are now in Suicide Prevention Month, and we have heard from many patients in the last years as well, about the help that the surgery gave to them, the support the surgery gave to them in their lives. I have had patients that committed suicide as well, so I send my big kiss to their families, and our support to their families as well. And we give, I hope we can keep giving this grain on the sand, and I hope I love that I know that bad things will happen to our patients, because they're happier after surgery, and I'm so happy that we can put this grain of sand in their lives. And I hope we can keep avoiding problems and avoiding patients to be unhappy, or let's say make them slightly happier after the surgery.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Yes, we're not promising any miracles, but it's one, like Dr. Simon said, a grain in the sand, and we have the psychological support here, and that's why I want to highlight the Suicide Prevention Month as well, because I believe that mental health is so important, and it's something that we all need to work on, and not just people who are in transition, and working on our own mental health, and being kind to ourselves is an important step in being more accepting of ourselves, and perhaps a good way to make those steps so that we don't go down the dark tunnel. So I encourage everybody out there who is considering suicide to, the moment that you start to have those thoughts, contact somebody, their helplines, reach out and talk to people, because we're there. And I'd just like to mention, actually, Sarah O'Connell, who's helping to manage our patient group, she recently contacted me because she noticed a former patient was writing some things on her Facebook wall that were disturbing, and she made the call, and the services in her town went to her house, and later on, that person thanked Sarah. Well, she sent actually, she didn't know it was Sarah. She sent a message out on her wall again, saying, "Whoever it was who called the local authorities, who came to my house, thank you." And so it works. And do that if you see somebody who is in that situation, who's writing things, on their social media. If you know where they live, call the authorities and have the suicide prevention crew in their town go to their house, because they do save lives. So thank you, Sarah Connell, for making the call on that one. So yes, thank you both, Jacqui, for joining us today, Dr. Simon, for all of your wisdom.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody here who's listening now and who's watching a replay. Please, let's give a hand. Put your claps down in the comments. Let us know that you enjoyed this topic, you enjoyed this kind of content, and if you have any ideas for different things, let us know, and we'll try to incorporate those in coming weeks. And as Jacqui is the prime example, that your input and your lobbying are important. So you don't need to be an activist. You just need to send some messages out to your legislators. And if you're a health professional or an ally working with the LGBTQI+ community, please show your support now by sending out support to the organizations in your communities who are working on these issues. Tweet the powers that be. Don't be afraid to speak out, and do whatever you can to help the charities like Stonewall, Mermaids in the UK, so they may continue their work which are protecting the basic human rights and healthcare access, um, and rights like peeing. So those all remain respected. And people can get their gender markers on their documents and their names changed. We need to protect those rights. So stay tuned, everybody, for upcoming lives. Next week, we will have the trans author Juno Roche and Polly Chattel from the US. Same time, same place. Lilia's Weekly Wednesdays, now at 5 p.m. Spanish time. And then on the 23rd, we'll be back again every week. So, and then at the end of the month, we'll have Sarah O'Connell, actually. She's going to be coming to speak with us alongside Marissa Farmer, who's also a former Facialteam patient who did a documentary about her journey from Boston to Spain in the midst of a pandemic to get miraculously her facial feminization. So she's a comic, and so it will be an interesting conversation. Please come back for the upcoming weeks. And don't forget, join our private patient peer group. Click the link down below, sign up for our newsletter, click the link down below. right there, or in the description. We also have some links for you to click to follow us, like us, and share this video. Stay safe, stay healthy, and please, everybody, remember, your healthcare matters and your happiness matters. Stay with us. Bye-bye.
Bye.